Hi you guys, it's me again. So today we're going to be making yet another flour dish, but today we're going to be making something called馅饼, which translates to meat patty or meat pie. I only learned how to make this dish a couple of months back, and ever since I made it, I think it's become one of my husband's favorite dishes. Alright, so enough chit-chatting, let's get on with the recipe. If you watched my previous video on how to make chives pancakes, you already know how to make the dough. If not, here are some really basic and simple instructions on how to make the dough perfect for your pancakes. For this video, I've added 3 to 4 cups of flour, and then what you do next is that you boil water and then you add 1 bowl of hot water into the flour and you mix it properly. Once that it's all mixed, you add another bowl of water, of lukewarm water, and you mix that together nicely. If you're going to use your hands kneading the dough just like I do in the video, just be careful you don't burn your hands because the water and the dough is going to be really hot in the beginning. Okay, so when you're kneading the dough, just make sure that you're kneading it properly. You don't want to be left with any flour lumps in the dough once you start making the pancakes and the meat patties, because that's not going to taste good at all and it's not going to be cooked properly that way. So when you're done with the dough, you're going to leave the dough and let it rest for about 40 minutes or even longer, but at least 40 minutes. Once you've finished the dough and you put the dough away for rest, you can start with your filling for the meat patties. So what you're going to do first is that you're going to start with chopping onions. So for this you can use any type of onion. I chose to use red onion this time, but any is okay. But be careful when you're chopping the onion. You don't want to be chopping up your fingers like I did in the beginning of this video, and I had to start the chopping over again. Okay, so let's go ahead and start chopping that onion. Okay, there we go. So once we're done chopping the onion, we're going to put the onion into a bigger bowl, and then we're going to add minced beef into the mixture of onion. Okay, so then we're going to be adding the onion and the beef, and we're going to give it a good mix before we start adding the spices into the mixture. So for the spices of the pancakes, actually they're more or less similar to the chive pancakes. First, we're going to start off by adding a little bit of sesame oil before we go ahead and add some Sichuan pepper to it. We're then going to go ahead and add something called 12 spices, which again can be found in any Chinese supermarket around the world. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to add some salt, and then we're going to add some chicken powder, and then we're going to give all of that a good mix. And just like most Chinese recipes, there is no right or wrong. So here you can go ahead, you can add more salt if you want to, you can skip the salt if you want to. I normally like to have my pancakes a little bit salty, but not too salty, because then we're just not going to be able to eat them, are we? Just remember, because this is raw meat, you're not going to be able to taste the mixture. So you don't want to be adding too many spices as well. So let's give that a nice mix. It's important that you mix it properly because you don't want to be left with lumps of salt or lumps of Sichuan pepper, because that's just going to taste weird when you start eating it. So now that your dough has rested for 40 minutes, it's time to start making the actual pancakes. So you can see what I'm doing in the video. I take a piece of dough and I roll it into a nice sized bowl, more or less the size of a ping pong ball. We then take our dough ball and we put it on the kitchen bench and we flatten it out. And then now it's time to get our rolling pin and we're going to start rolling out the dough. So we're going to end up with a pancake looking piece of dough. And I have to be honest with you guys, this is actually the most difficult part. Making it into like a perfect shape, it's really time consuming and difficult. And I've ended up giving up so many times, rolling it back into a ping pong ball and starting all over again. So if you don't manage to do it perfectly, that's totally okay. You see, mine is also not perfectly round. So once the dough is looking more or less like a pancake, you're going to take the dough and you're going to put it in your hand, and then we're going to take the filling that you made earlier and we're going to start filling the dough with the onion and meat mixture. So when filling the dough with the mixture, you don't want to put too much in there because you're going to have to be able to close it up later, but you don't want it to be too empty either, because then when you start cooking it, it's not going to be, full of meat and that delicious flavor that we want. So now we're going to start shaping the bun. So it's actually going to turn into a bun before it turns into a pancake. So follow the steps in the video. It's a little bit tricky in the beginning, but once you got the hang of it, it's actually very, very easy. The most important thing when you're closing it is that you don't want it to be any holes in the dough, like you want it to be totally tight, because if it's not tight when you start cooking it, the filling is going to come out and all the juiciness from the meat is going to come out. So now that we have our bun ready, we're going to put it on the kitchen bench with a little bit of flour and we're just going to pat it and make it into a pancake. Just be careful, don't do it too hard so that you break the dough. And voila, this is what it should look like when you're done. And now it's time to cook them in the pan. So preheat your pan and then add some oil and then put the pancakes. I normally add 3 or 4 at the same time and I cook them for about 3 to 4 minutes on each side. But you have to make sure that you check on the pancakes every now and then because you don't want to burn them. So we know the pancakes are done just by looking at the color and also the texture of them. So you see, these are completely perfect and ready to be eaten. In China, they normally eat these pancakes with raw garlic and vinegar, which tastes amazing. So bon appetit, everyone!